It's a very difficult subject, and I mean the first thing is that we have to recognize that it's different to mitigation, in the sense that of course it would not address the other effects of increasing carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere, such as ocean acidification, etc., and and the change in ecosystem productivity arising from higher CO2 concentrations. But also, of course, emission reductions have a global benefit. The effects of climate change don't play out universally, but it does not make a difference whether a ton of CO2 is removed in China or in Latin America or in Africa or in New Zealand. The effect on the global climate is the same, but the effect on the global climate from an aerosol injection implemented by a specific country may not at all be the same across the world. So you have a heightened risk of unilateral deployment, but also more self-interested deployment, whereas reducing emissions cannot be self-interested. I mean, there may be, of course, internal political reasons why you engage in a certain mitigation strategy or target, but the effect on the climate is universal. The effect of solar radiation modification, almost by definition, tends not to be. So for me, engaging with solar radiation modification, we have to avoid treating it as a technocratic problem. It's not a solution where the barrier sits predominantly in the scientific understanding and technical deployment, but it is something that's inherently embedded in conversations around equity and global governance. And of course, the challenge is that the reason why people are interested in solar radiation modification is exactly the failure of global governance to achieve the emissions reductions we need. And so my sense is that the only reason where solar radiation modification could be meaningfully deployed is if the world is on course for temperatures to peak and then decline, and you could then achieve what's often referred to as peak shaving. So say we know that we will peak at 1.7 degrees and then decline back to 1.5 degrees, and it would be good to add something to the atmosphere that limits that peak to only 1.5 degrees or 1.6 degrees rather than 1.7 degrees. But that's precisely our problem. At this point, we have no indication from a degree of global cooperation that we will in fact peak temperatures and reach a decline in temperature subsequently. And if you deploy solar radiation modification in a context of continuously rising global temperatures, then you're very much in sort of an addictive gambling situation. There is no end to it. And the risks then, of course, escalate from termination, from unilateral deployment, especially in a world that does not manage to achieve a global cooperative solution to climate change. We cannot allow solar radiation modification to be led by the technical feasibility with an afterthought about how do we now govern this, but it needs a governance-led conversation, I guess, in order to make it a solution rather than a problem.